Welcome to episode 4 of the Gluten-Free Psychiatry Podcast. I'm Daniel Williams, your host. Today's topic is the top 9 neurotoxins in the food and water supply. We're going to start with atrazine, botulinum toxin, BPA, fluoride, glyphosate, which is the weed killer RoundUp, heavy metals, parabens, vegetable seed oils, and PFAS, the polyfluoroalkyl substances. So those are top 8. The show notes has a list of about 15 different things that the Brave AI browser pulled up as well, but this was the result of my watching the headlines and doing a qualitative meta analysis basically to put this together. So now I'm going to take each of these top 9 neurotoxins and I'm going to break down with just a little more details. The show notes has full text, links, research, and there's a separate video on this that shows a little more. So number 9 was atrazine. This is known to decrease sperm count, alters testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. So this messes up our hormones and affects fertility. If you know anybody having trouble with infertility, consider our Detox Fit and Fertile support group. There's a documentary called Save the Frogs because it's known to cause sex changes and it's in our water supply. Is that interesting? All this talk of transgenderism, and there is a transgender causing hormone that's in our water supply and food. And atrazine is an herbicide, and 80 million pounds of it are sprayed on the crops in the U.S. every spring. So that's number 9. Number 8 is botulinum toxin. Now, hopefully this is not in your food supply because the food would be rotten and you should probably smell that. But when canned foods spoil, it tends to be botulinum toxin. I used to be a food inspector in the Army once upon a time, stationed in Germany 2 years after the Berlin Wall came down. I bring it up here because it's in root canals also. When there's retained ligament in the root canal, it releases botulinum toxin. There's a good documentary on that called Root Cause, and it's in Gaia, GAIA.com. There's also one called Government Film Botulism in Rhesus Monkeys, and it's an older film. But it shows what they do, and it's been normalized because the pharmaceutical companies are allowed to train our children in commercials and sort of normalize the next generation. Number 7 is BPA. This is a threat to all fertility. I've got a resource here that covers male fertility since masculinity has been assaulted so much globally. The top sources from BPA plastic, this bisphenol A, you probably know, is plastic. Water bottles, packaged food, and the printing and the labeling. When food labeling absorbs into the package or into the food, that transmits plastic with it. Thermal paper receipts. So if you handle receipts or if you were in the womb while your mother was a cashier, you could have high levels of BPA. Also canned good, the waterproof lining inside of cans, and other types of products. Got 3 documentaries here on that. There is a separate podcast and video episode on my favorite documentaries, so I won't mention them further going forward. But directly, besides the threat to fertility and BPA acting like estrogen, it is known to directly cause apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, also cell damage, and it targets the hippocampus. That's the same area targeted in PTSD. It lasts in the body about a day, and so if you just stop getting plastic put into your mouth, chances are within a day it's going to be out of your body, and within a week you should feel fine from this neurotoxin. But hippocampus is hurt in post-traumatic stress disorder, major depression, traumatic brain injury, and severe sleep deprivation. Lots of people have multiple of these problems at the same time. So drinking plastic water bottles, if you have PTSD, makes no sense. Biologically, you're undoing your psychotherapy. So think about that. It targets the hippocampus. And I threw in the COVID vaccine, not because it's in the food supply, just because there's a couple of documentaries you may have missed from a few years ago called Watch the Water, and those are very important. And heavy metals is on this list of top 9 neurotoxins today. And there are 55 undeclared chemical elements found in the COVID vaccines. I've got the research and reference listed here, and this includes heavy metals. So the COVID vaccine is mentioned in this top 9 neurotoxins because it's got heavy metals in it, and it's an unknown source, and that is a new research finding. So Mindshift Care is an independent voice for behavioral health, and you're going to see it show up where we'll try to keep you on the cutting edge like that, and we're really not afraid to say anything. It's more about how do people get better. That's all we care about. Number 6, fluoride. Fluoride's in the water. The EPA refused to hear its neurotoxic and reproductive effects for 70 years here until recently in 2024 for the very first time. So this stuff's put into the water supply by contractors hired by the CAA, I'm told. It's rumor patrol on Facebook. I don't know, but it's ridiculous to think neurotoxins are in the water. And so we've got some documentaries there and such, but it's known to cause headache and insomnia, cognitive deficits during testing, and intellectual disability. It also disrupts the reproductive system. So it's a sterilizing, mental retardation causing thing that's been sold to us as something that's good for our teeth. In Florida, it's how you radio label things for imaging too. So depending on how much you have in your body is how far they can see you from space. Fluoride. Yeah. Ask for fluoride-free toothpaste and products from now on, and watch your dental floss. Number 5 is glyphosate. This is RoundUp. Monsanto still makes this, and it's available in Lowe's, but they say it's safe to use. However, there's a huge lawsuit judgment for industrial use, and there's a documentary, of course. It mimics estrogen, therefore promoting cancer. I've got a long list of things it does to the neuron growth. It shortens the nerves. You can't let them grow, and they're all inflamed. Does that sound like you? Do you have chronic pain? Glyphosate is in 95% of sperm samples in the United States. So, fortunately, there's a little research that comes out with the ionic foot bath, just like I showed that the PFAS number 1 does further down this list. We'll discuss further later. That brings us to number 4, heavy metals. Heavy metals are actually most likely in rice, fish, seafood, because the world is so contaminated. Things like heavy metals and mercury get in there. Parabens is next. Parabens come from cosmetics, like 70% of them. They're also still allowed to use parabens as food and drink preservatives in the United States, where it's outlawed everywhere else. It's ridiculous. These are cancer causing, and we need to lobby against it. The pharmaceutical, the medical industry doesn't want this taken out. And so hopefully we'll see some change here in the next 4 years. Hopefully. There's a documentary called Toxic Beauty. So people should really reach for cruelty-free and paraben-free cosmetics. So consider that. And if you know of some or would like to introduce us to some as a rep of a company that does something like that, I'd love to have you on the show to learn more. There's a long list under parabens, but I want to keep this moving and have a lot of different kinds of resources for your brain to learn in different ways. Number 2, vegetable seed oils. I include this. It's still a hypothetical, but the research is there to show that this is associated with macular degeneration. And so there's documentaries about this, and it worsens free radicals in the body, which are supposedly responsible for inflammation. However, the earthing science has uncovered that if we're grounded and touching the earth or sleeping on some grounding sheets, then that undoes that inflammation anyway, that the real problem is that we're not grounded. Modern medicine just makes pills and chases symptoms. We need to get back to earth and nature and literally earthing science in this case. So if you have a favorite restaurant in your neighborhood that's mom and pop owned where they could choose the cooking oil, you should show them this this podcast or some other resources about choosing oils to cook the meat with that do not contain vegetable seed oils, or else you may not want to eat there anymore. This brings us to number 1 in our top 9 list of neurotoxins in the food and water supply, and that is PFAS, the polyfluoroalkyl substances. This stuff comes from firefighting foam and water supply. It's on Teflon coatings from coating cookingware, and there's documentaries on this where 60 years ago DuPont knew about this, and them and 3M Corporation, conspired to conceal the neurotoxic and reproductive damage of these things, causing the entire world to become contaminated with this stuff. So it's not in too much food, according to the USDA, like about 3% of food tested. They've been testing about 5 years now, around 2020 approximately. You can look it up on their website. So anyway, PFAS does come out in an ionic foot bath. I showed this myself in a separate episode. I'm the first in the world to show that the media is calling them forever chemicals because they can stay in the body up to 28 years. But let's quit thinking of it like that. Let's quit labeling that with the energy. Let's quit using our mental and the energetic emotion at the same time of fear with this concept of what PFAS is. Quit calling it the forever chemicals. That is perpetuating the problem, people, and that is why you need to mind shift, because it comes out in ionic foot bath, which means it should come out when you open the sweat pores, right? Theoretically, and it should come out during a sauna. So do ionic foot bath or do a sauna, do some research with me, join the mastermind group on this subject. It's called Detox, Fit, and Fertile, because all these neurotoxins affect fertility as well. I will go ahead and read you quickly the list from the Brave AI browser from January 2025. When I looked for neurotoxins in the food supply, they came up with other things. As you know, this AI is not exactly programmed to educate us. It's programmed to take our thinking ability away from us, and obviously been used to misconstrue the facts and mislead and direct an entire generation. Aspartame, high fructose corn syrup, trans fats and hydrogenated oils, artificial flavorings, diacetyl, which is found in artificial buttering flavor, and microwave popcorn, perchlorate, red food coloring, calcium caseinate, hydrolyzed vegetable protein, cyanogenic glycosides, and ciguatoxins. This comes from fish like barracuda, black grouper, mackerel. You'd have to eat that on purpose to get to it. So if you're traveling abroad, definitely check out those kind of things, but that wasn't the intent of this podcast. The intent is to make customers aware, advocate, shop local. That would be my advice. Filter your water all the time and vote every day with your dollar. We have to slowly begin to replace all the food, water products, all our clothing, all these things as we discover these toxins are a relevant part of our life and they're disrupting our families with our health problems. So you have a great day and enjoy the Gluten-Free Psychiatry Podcast, yet another round. I'm Dr. Daniel Williams. The Gluten-Free Psychiatry Podcast is hosted by MindShiftCare.com. If you're writing that down, it's not MindShift, it's MindShiftCare.com, where I've created the first free virtual intensive outpatient program using the same classes I taught at world-class treatment centers. Courses include how to mind shift, anxiety reduction, pet therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder, sex therapy for PTSD, as well as training for caregivers and professionals. These free courses are open to the public without collecting your information or using Google AdWords tracking. Watch the videos in any order you like. Share the love by posting the PDF ambassador slides with links to the entire program for your tribe. MindShiftCare.com, an independent voice for behavioral health.